When it comes to growing tomatoes, a big part of my success I think I owe to making my own compost. The good stuff is down here at the bottom. But whenever I plant, I always put a healthy dose of this good black rich stuff in the bottom of the planting hole. I think it does a lot of good for the plants. When I plant my tomatoes, I start with a good sized hole, and now is where that good homemade compost comes in. I just fill most of the hole with that. Another thing I do that I think makes a difference is I start with a tall plant and I bury most of it under the ground. Before I do that, I go ahead and pinch off any leaves that are going to be under the surface, like so. I just stick that tall tomato plant down in the hole and fill in around it with some homemade compost. And then I like to put a layer of compost on the top also. Now what's going to happen, the main root ball is down here at the bottom, but it will grow roots all along this stem, everywhere where it's buried under the ground, so it'll create a much bigger root system. And I'll show you a short clip of a video I made of a tomato plant I pulled out of the ground after the season was over, so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Give people a good look at the root system. This was the original root ball down here at the end, and I buried it about 8 inches deep, and as you can see, it developed roots all along the stem, and that's why one of the reasons why my plants grow so well. They got a good healthy root system, and that's what it looks like with most of it buried. Mulch is important for 3 reasons, really. The main reason, or one of the main reasons I use it, is to hold moisture in. As you can see, I use wood chips throughout my garden, and you shouldn't use wood chips if you're going to till or rototill your garden. You should only use them if you're going to have a no-dig garden, because it can really lead to problems if you mix them up with the dirt. But when it gets hot, I also, as you can tell underneath this tomato plant, I've got some shredded leaves to even enhance the wood chips a little bit more. And as well as holding in the moisture, the mulch will help keep weeds from coming up, and that's a big plus because I'm kind of lazy like that. I don't want to spend any more time weeding than I have to. So that'll help keep some of the weeds from coming up. And then another plus is it kind of creates a barrier between the tomato leaves at the bottom and the soil. A lot of your soil-borne pathogens that caused tomatoes to get diseased are introduced to the tomato plant when it rains and the water splashes up on the leaves. Well, having mulch will help a little bit to prevent that. But those are 3 good reasons to mulch your tomatoes. I've done it for years. I've used grass clippings or just half composted leaves, but whatever you use, it should help hold in the moisture and keep the weeds out anyway. If you'll notice at the bottom of my tomato plants, I try to keep them pruned and have no leaves that are too close to the ground. I like to eventually have the bottom leaves at least a foot off the ground. And the reason for that is when it rains, most of the pathogens that can affect tomatoes and cause them to be diseased are actually soil-borne. When it rains, it splashes those things up on the bottom leaves of the tomato plant, and many times that's how they get infected. So if you keep those leaves higher off the ground, it can really help you keep from getting any sort of disease in the first place. That's just one way to keep from it. And another thing that I like to prune are what's called suckers, and I'll show you those now. Follow this main stem upward at the leaf joints. If you look carefully, there's a little tiny leaf there. That's the very beginnings of a sucker. If you don't get that out when it first starts growing, it will eventually, see this leaf joint here, this is a sucker that is still on there that I haven't removed. I'll remove that after I get done taking this video, but what I'll do is cut that off right here at the leaf joint. And this part of the plant I'll just throw in the trash. I don't want it in my compost pile, just in case it was carrying some sort of disease. But just keep those suckers pruned. On my tomatoes, I usually let 1 or 2 suckers grow, and the rest I prune off. And that'll keep your plant focused on making better and bigger fruit rather than more foliage. You can't eat the foliage on a tomato plant, so what you want is more fruit. And this one's looking really good. Here's another example of a sucker. You follow up the main stem, when you get to this leaf joint right here, the leaf goes out sideways. Right in that corner is a sucker. And then the main part extends on up this way. What I want to do is just get rid of that sucker. That one's small enough I can just pinch it off, and that'll go in the trash. One thing I like to do is water the base of the plant rather than use a sprinkler. They're on my helper. I think the plants just do a lot better if you don't water from above. And I accomplish my watering with drip irrigation. Let's look over here where I can get down to it a little better where the beans are. All I have is a 1/2-inch line with drippers about every foot or so. And on my tomatoes I just have 1 dripper for each plant. That allows me to water slower and deeper, and I think that really helps on the really hot summer days. And if you want to set up a drip irrigation system, it can be kind of expensive. The 1/2-inch line is pretty reasonable, but the drippers can be expensive, and so can the fittings. Let me see if I can find the fitting over here. Yeah, it's T-fitting here. They can run about a couple bucks a piece, so setting up a whole system all at once can be kind of expensive. But if you do it in phases like I did, you know, you can spread the costs over several years. What I did on my tomatoes when I first started using the drip irrigation is I set up one of these 1/2-inch lines with a dripper on each plant, and it was just one straight line, and I hooked it up to my hose every time I wanted to water. Now I have it ran all the way back to my faucet, so all I have to do is turn it on excuse me, turn on the faucet, and then I set a timer and water a certain amount of time so I won't forget. Since it doesn't squirt water, you know, it's easy to forget if you turn it on. And And when I first started, I accidentally left it on all night a couple of times. But if you try the drip irrigation, you don't have to have an elaborate system. Just set up small and see how you like it. And if you don't like it, it's no big loss. If you do like it, I think you might be sold on it like me. I couldn't imagine watering without it now. But anyway, that's a few of the tips. You could add a bunch more, but that's probably my top 5.